Our spirituality, if it's going to be worth anything at all, has to be embodied. It has to have the fullness of body. And that means sometimes making terrible mistakes, as well as having beautiful, ecstatic moments. It means being big enough and brave enough and bold enough to learn from our mistakes, to learn when we have hit the wrong note, and to take something from that. In that, of course, the instrument of being is our teacher. Life is our teacher. And how lovely that is, because we can then embrace it without any false or restrictive notion of perfectionism. Kim and Heather have just been spending time at Oroville and are about to return there. So I was particularly delighted to find this little teaching from Sri Aurobindo, who's a wonderful Indian saint who left the body only in 1950. And he said to us today, you can be a living, ardent instrument with which the supreme artist works. Isn't that gorgeous? You can be one of the instruments of his self-manifestation, the perpetual process by which his reality is birthed into expression. So to be the ambassador, to be the student, to be the instrument of what the world needs, we need to be humble. We need to be humble enough to learn. We need to be open, we need to be curious, and we need to be brave. We also need to be committed. And that's the second of the three particular lessons I wanted to bring to your attention that music can give us. We will make progress in terms of our understanding of our capacities. We will make progress in terms of living as vibrant, open instruments, if we are also committed to doing so. It requires not just insight, it also requires an act of will. And I think that's tremendously, beautifully brought out when we think that it is of music and of spiritual practice that we use the word practice most particularly and most emphatically. I've come to think that all of life is spiritual practice, and I believe that if you are a musician, everything in life feeds into your music as it does for me in my writing. But there are also times in which we really need to put our consciousness of what we're doing at the very top of our agenda. It is not enough that we have a talent for spirituality or a talent for music. It's not enough. In fact, we begin to honor that talent only when we pay it enough attention to give it time, to give it thought, and most of all, to give it commitment, patience, and tenacity. We don't make those exquisite sounds that our musicians have made for us today just by looking at a piece of music and glancing at it and turning our attention elsewhere. We make those notes, they make those notes, we make those notes when we return constantly to what might seem incredibly routine practices, to what might seem immensely demanding of us in terms of time, attention, concentration, and consciousness. But it is through that returning that we grow. It is through that faithful practice that our choices expand. It is through that we learn to pay closest of close attention. It is through that we come awake. We can do this whether or not we are musicians, And we can do this whether or not we are committed spiritual practitioners. We can do it through an act of will, and also by experiencing in the great laboratory of the body, in the great laboratory of our own lives, that when we return to pay attention to what matters, we more and more easily express it in our lives and in our world. And the kind of qualities that I'm talking about, compassion, joy, equanimity, tolerance, forgiveness, peace, these are qualities also deeply needed in our world, just as music is. So the third of my qualities is very much about the power to choose and to choose wisely, to be deeply responsible in a mature way that takes in a great deal of playfulness, but is deeply and seriously and earnestly committed that we can choose and that we can choose wisely. Those of us who are lucky enough to be living in a country where we have all our basic physical needs met and cared for and catered for, we have the freedom to choose and to think about our choices and to choose wisely. Not everybody in our world has this freedom. We do have this freedom, and we need to express our gratitude for it by choosing wisely. The thinking that accelerates our motivation, that accelerates our actions, is incredibly important in this context of embodied spirituality. At the very beginning of the Dhammapada are those immensely famous lines that we could all spend the rest of our lives considering deeply. What we are today comes from our thoughts of yesterday, and our present thoughts build our tomorrow. So I would really ask you to consider what choices you will make if you begin to take seriously that you are not only the author of your own life, you are also your life's composer. You are creating the music that is your life. Note by note, choice by choice, you create the music that is your life. I also want to point out to you, because I am, after all, a writer, and I'm a writer who has written a great deal about poetry, and I have a great passion for poetry. I also want to point out that the spoken word also has the power to heal us. The spoken word also can be deeply melodic, deeply healing. And I think we again need to take that really to our hearts, that through speech we have enormous power to harm, and through speech we have enormous power to heal. There is another teacher who I want to bring to you just for a moment, Hazrat Inayat Khan, who says, and it's not by chance that he himself was a musician as well as a profound teacher from the Sufi tradition. Each individual composes the music of his own life. If he or she injures another, he brings disharmony. When his sphere is disturbed, he is disturbed himself, and there is discord in the melody of his life. If he can quicken the feeling of another to joy or to gratitude, by that much he adds to his own life. I love the choral sense of that we come forward from this great chorus of humanity to speak our part and to retreat back into it. I think we can really hear the truth of that. We can hear the truth of that resonating in our entire being, because we know the effect of words on us, and similarly, as we heard in the teachings from the Golden Rule today, we know the effect our words have on other people. Today, 21st of September, is not only our day to celebrate music and the harmonies and the glories that music brings us, and also the consolations. For me, music is also one of the most profound consolations that life could bring. But we are also celebrating today the International Day of Peace, with our brothers and our sisters throughout the world. In every country of the world, we celebrate today the International Day of Peace. So perhaps we could finish then by each of us at some point today making a quiet resolution that we will contribute going forward from this moment, that we will contribute even more deeply to the harmony that is so urgently needed in our world, which does not require us all to sing the same tune, which does not require us all to sing the same note. And in fact, the wonderful thing about harmonies is that they are created from many notes, and that sometimes the most marvelous harmonies arise when there has been discord, and then there is a resolution. So in harmonizing with life, we can allow for many, many differences, resolving into even greater beauty. And I think that is especially true when they are given, not just heard, but when they are given, not through the mind and the ears only, but through the greatest divine instrument of all, which is the human heart. Peace be with your hearts. Peace be in all hearts. Peace be in our world.